Have you ever heard a story so incredible, it sounds like an S straight out of a movie? A story about a villain who becomes the ultimate hero. Well, today we re-diving into one of the most dramatic and powerful transformation stories ever told the life of the Apostle Paul. This isn't just an ancient tale. It's a story about radical change, unwavering faith, and the idea that no one is ever too far gone to be redeemed. So, stick around, because you're about to see how one of history's most fervent persecutors became its most influential missionary. Before he was the Apostle Paul, he was Saul of Tarsus. Imagine a man who was brilliant, passionate, and deeply religious. Saul was a Pharisee, a highly respected teacher of Jewish law. He was also a Roman citizen, which gave him special rights and privileges. From his perspective, he was doing everything right. He followed the law to the letter and believed he was defending God's honor. But this devotion had a dark side. Saul saw the followers of Jesus Christ not as a new faith, but as a dangerous cult that threatened the very foundations of Judaism. He believed they were blasphemers, and he was determined to stop them. His opposition wasn't just talk. Saul was an active and fierce persecutor of the early church. The book of Acts tells us he was breathing out threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord. He went from house to house, dragging out men and women and throwing them into prison. He was even present at the execution of Stephen, the first Christian martyr, and he approved of it. In Saul's mind, he wasn't a villain. He genuinely believed he was serving God by stamping out this new heretical movement. He was on a mission, a crusade, to preserve his faith, and his next target was a city called Damascus. Saul obtained letters from the high priest authorizing him to travel to Damascus and arrest any followers of the way. As Christianity was then called, he set off on the road, fully intending to continue his campaign of persecution. But what happened next would not only change his life forever, it would change the course of world history. As he neared Damascus, a sudden, brilliant light from heaven flashed all around him. It was so intense that it threw him to the ground. Then he heard a voice that would echo in his soul for the rest of his days. It said, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Terrified and bewildered, Saul asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The voice replied, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men traveling with Saul were speechless. They heard the sound, but saw no one. When Saul got up from the ground, he opened his eyes, but he couldn't see. He was completely blind. His companions had to lead him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days, Saul was in darkness. He didn't eat or drink anything, wrestling with everything he had just experienced. The man who thought he saw things so clearly was now physically blind, forced to confront a new spiritual reality. Meanwhile, in Damascus, there was a disciple named Ananias. Imagine his shock when Jesus appeared to him in a vision and told him to go find Saul of Tarsus. Ananias knew exactly who Saul was. He protested, saying, "Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much harm he has done to your holy people in Jerusalem, and he has come here with authority to arrest all who call on your name." It was a terrifying request. Ananias was being asked to walk into the lion's den. But the Lord insisted, telling him that Saul was a chosen instrument to proclaim his name to the Gentiles, to their kings, and to the people of Israel. "Trust in God!" Ananias went. He found Saul, placed his hands on him, and said, "Brother Saul, the Lord who appeared to you on the road has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. This was the moment of his complete conversion. He was baptized, and the man who had come to Damascus to destroy the church was now one of its newest members. He didn't waste any time. He immediately began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. You can just imagine the confusion. People were stunned. They said, "ISNT, This the man who raised havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on this name? And hasn't he come here to take them as prisoners? Saul's transformation was so sudden and so total, it was almost unbelievable. From this point on, Saul became known as Paul. This wasn't just a name change. It signified a complete identity shift. The persecutor became the hater became the apostle of love. Paul dedicated the rest of his life to a singular mission, spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, especially to the non-Jews, known as the Gentiles. This was a radical idea at the time. Many early believers thought the message of Jesus was exclusively for the Jewish people. But Paul championed the idea that God's grace was for everyone, regardless of their background or heritage. He embarked on a series of incredible missionary journeys, traveling thousands of miles across the Roman Empire. He went to places like modern-day Turkey, Greece, and Italy, planting churches in major cities like Corinth, Ephesus, and Philippi. His strategy was brilliant. He would typically start by preaching in the local synagogue, but when he faced opposition, he would turn his focus to the Gentiles. He was a master communicator, able to connect with people from all walks of life, from philosophers on Mars Hill in Athens to common laborers. He wasn't just establishing churches, he was building communities of faith. But how did he keep in touch with all these new believers? Through letters. Paul was a prolific writer, and his letters, or epistles, make up a huge portion of the New Testament. Books like Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, and Ephesians are not just historical documents. They are deep theological treatises and practical guides for Christian living. In them, Paul explains the core tenets of the faith he once tried to destroy. He writes about salvation by grace through faith, not by works of the law. He emphasizes the importance of love and unity within the church, and he gives powerful instructions on how to live a life that honors God. These letters became the bedrock of Christian theology and continue to inspire billions of people today. Paul's life as a missionary was anything but easy. His commitment to the gospel came at a tremendous personal cost. In one of his letters, he lists some of the hardships he endured. He was imprisoned multiple times, flogged, and beaten with rods. He was stoned and left for dead. He was shipwrecked 3 times and even spent a night and a day in the open sea. He faced danger from bandits, from his own people, and from Gentiles. He was constantly hungry, cold, and exhausted. Most people would have given up after just one of these experiences. But Paul's faith wasn't just a belief system. It was the very source of his strength. He wrote that he learned to be content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry. His suffering was not a sign of God's absence, but a way for God's power to be made perfect in his weakness. Think about that. Even from a Roman prison cell, under house arrest, he didn't write letters of despair. He wrote letters of joy. To the church in Philippi, he wrote, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I will say it again. Rejoice. His focus wasn't on his circumstances, but on the mission. He saw his imprisonment as an opportunity to share the gospel with his Roman guards. Paul's resilience is a powerful testament to the depth of his conviction. Ultimately, Paul paid the ultimate price for his faith. Church tradition holds that he was martyred in Rome around 67 AD during the persecution under Emperor Nero. As a Roman citizen, he was likely spared the horror of crucifixion and was beheaded instead. His life ended, but his legacy was just beginning. The churches he planted continued to grow. The letters he wrote were copied, circulated, and eventually included in the Bible, shaping Christian thought for the next 2 millennia. The man who once tried to extinguish the light of Christianity became its most brilliant torchbearer. So, what can we learn from the incredible story of the Apostle Paul? First, it teaches us that no one is beyond redemption. If God could transform Saul, a man who murdered Christians, into Paul, the greatest missionary in history, then there is hope for anyone, no matter your past, no matter the mistakes you've made. Your story isn't over. Second, Paul's life shows the power of a single, committed life. He was one man, but his faith and determination changed the world. he reminds us that God often uses imperfect, ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. Paul didn't see himself as a superhero. He called himself the chief of sinners. Yet he allowed God to work through him in a mighty way. His story is the ultimate proof that a life surrendered to a higher purpose can have an impact that echoes through eternity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the life of the Apostle Paul. It's a story that challenges and inspires me every time I hear it. If you found this story powerful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores faith, history, and incredible transformations. Let me know in the comments what part of Paul's story stands out to you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.